Hello everyone and welcome. In this lesson we will talk a little bit about the interface of Blender. Now before we jump right into this, if you have never been on my channel before, this is the place where we talk about 3D artwork, 2D artwork, graphic design, social media, business, and so much more. So if you are in any of those things, what I would like you to do is make sure to drop below the video right now. There are going to be a subscribe button along with a bell icon. If you click on both of those, then I will notify you of any new videos so you don't miss any of them. And then after you subscribe, if you comment on the video saying I have subscribed, I will actually go back through, I will reply back to you and welcome you to the channel because simply I'm just so excited that you are here with us today. So let's not waste any more time. Let's say we go ahead and get right to our tutorial. Now, this is the interface you should see when you first open Blender. Now, if you have opened an existing Blender file, you may see a different layout or a different interface. That's because the layout is actually saved with the file. But just know that you can always get back to this default interface, and I will show you how you can do that in a second. Now, the interface is composed of individual panels, and inside each panel is what's called an editor. And you can tell what the editors are because they have an icon either in the top left corner such as this or the bottom left corner such as here. Now those little icons in the corner tell you what type of editor it is, so let's go to the very top left corner here and we see this little icon here with the letter I in it. In fact, if we left click on this and pull this down, you can see these are all the different types of editors we have, and the one we are using here at the top of the interface is called the information window or the info window. Now this window is pretty straightforward. It just has a file, a menu which allows you to open, close, save, and change the preferences of Blender. You can also import and export the files and so forth. It also has a render menu, and the render menu allows us to render images or animation. And we also have a window menu. Next to that, we have the help menu, which brings up web-based help from Blender. Now, next to this, we have our layout menu. Now, as you can see, we are on the default layout. If we go over here, just to the left of this, you will see we have a pull-down menu. This actually allows us to choose whatever type of window layout is appropriate. Now, these are just some of the presets that come with Blender, but you can also make your own. So, for example, if we were using animation, we could just click on this and it would reconfigure the windows so that it's easier for us to animate. If we were working, for example, with UV editing, again, it would change the window layout. Now, let's go ahead and go back to our default layout. If you can't find the default layout, we can always reset Blender to get to this. So all we have to do is find the file menu and just do load factory settings. Once we do that, it loads all the default preferences and it basically resets the whole Blender software. But be careful when you do this, because if you have custom keyboard shortcuts set up, it will revert them back to the original settings. So just be aware of that. Again, along the top of the information window, we have a scene menu here. This is just a pull down menu which allows us to select different scenes. We have a place where we can select which renderer we are using. If you have a plugin renderer, it would show up here. And then we also have basically an information panel here, which allows us to see the version of Blender we're using and the information about the objects that we have selected. Now along the right side of the Blender interface, we have two editors. The first one here at the top is called the outliner. The outliner is basically a list of everything in the scene and allows us to choose whatever we want just by selecting them here in the outliner. Now if you notice here, I'm having to scroll up and down through the outliner window because it's kind of size a little bit small. In fact, we can resize any one of these editors simply by clicking over the edge, this edge over here, and dragging. So if you put our cursor over the bottom edge of the outliner, left click and drag, you can see how we can expand it so we can see everything in the scene. We can also expand it horizontally. So if we left click and drag over this edge, here we can actually make this larger. Now this brings us to the properties panel, which is the one below the outliner. And you will notice how this window is contextual. It changes a little bit depending upon the object that we select. So for example, if we select the cube, we get a number of different icons here. In fact, let me bring this out a little bit so we can see all of these. So you will see a number of different buttons, and each one of these buttons is actually a tab. So this one here, for example, allows us to see the render properties. This one shows the scene property. And this one here, for example, shows us the properties about the selected object itself. And this will again change depending upon what we select. We have also the materials properties. So these again are basically just properties attached to whatever we are working with. So in this case, we have materials because it's actually a physical object. The cube is a physical object. That's why we have this materials tab attached to that. If we are working with cameras, on the other hand, cameras really don't have materials applied to them, so this will change. Now, along the bottom of the interface, we have the timeline. This is where we can scrub animation. We can also set keyframes and do playback. Now, above here is this really big window, and this is called a 3D view. And the reason it's a 3D view, well, it's because this is where we see our 3D objects. This is really the main part of Blender. It's the main window into our 3D universe. This is where we can do most of our work. We can do modeling, animation, we can do rendering. A lot of that happens here in the 3D view. Okay? Now, if you haven't noticed, we can actually take these icons that tell us what type of window it is and actually change that and change the type of editor that we are working with. So you can see here, we are working with a 3D view. But if we want to, we can change that into any other type of editor. So if we wanted to, we could change this to a really big outliner, as you can see. We can also change this to a really big graph editor that has to do with animation and edit the keyframes. We can also change this to a really big Python console to do a little bit of coding here. But again, we can change this pretty much to anything we want, but I'm gonna go ahead and change this back to a 3D view. So those are some of the basics of the Blender interface. As you can see, the interface can be very configurable, but we can always get back to our default settings. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. We have seen the interface of Blender. Now, if you have any further questions or suggestions, let me know by leaving a comment right down below. And if you like this video, please do me a favor and hit that like button. And don't forget to drop below and subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you get notified every time I release a new video. Also, if you find this video useful, make sure to share it with your friends. Alright guys, well that's it for today. Again, my name is Enes Sherkawi. See you in the next video. Take care.